In this video, you'll learn how to create centralized asset databases for Cinema4D specifically. If you want to learn how to do that and that's all you want, you can skip to this time in the video. Otherwise, I will also be teaching about centralized versus local assets, when you should use them, how you should use them, and how I personally use them in my freelance work. One of the greatest challenges that faces any sort of creative professional is asset management and efficiency in your file systems. In a world where efficiency is more and more valued and projects that used to take a lot of time are now expected to take a little bit of time, one of the most valuable skills you can possess is knowing where things are in this industry that requires us to have hundreds or thousands of assets for individual projects. The difference between taking 5 minutes to find an asset and 35 seconds to find an asset over the course of a project happening continually over and over again sometimes leads to days, or depending on the scale of the project, even weeks of wasted time because things weren't in the right place. There's also a balance to be found in today's world where lots of people work remote between centralized assets and local assets. Which do you use when? What kinds of files do you put where? It's incredibly messy, and with the number of assets used in creative work today, it's a challenge. Today I want to share with you how I have chosen to route my files in both centralized and local ways, how I handle files in their own systems, and then sometimes in individual programs. I'll show you how I use the asset browser in Cinema4D to keep all of my clients' assets ready to go where they're needed. Given the world's circumstances today, my primary workstation stays at home because for the last year or a year and a half, it's been where I do most of my work. That workstation is a custom-built PC that has no shortage of external hard drives plugged into it at any given time, serving various purposes, housing different assets for different projects to get things done. Get subscribed to learn about building a custom rig based around CG and creative work, because that should be coming later this week as I do some system maintenance. I also have an office location that I share with another freelancer who lives in my city, so being able to work on a laptop remotely on this system and have some centralized assets is a big deal to me as well. As far as local assets go, I have a couple different external hard drives that I use in a system to determine how they're used or where I take them. The first one is just a 3D assets drive. I'll never be doing CG work on my laptop, so that hard drive stays plugged into the back of my primary editing rig pretty much all the time. It just goes into the Thunderbolt port where it has the fastest connection, and it never moves. It houses all of my 3D assets, and I never have to think about it. The second external hard drive that I use houses a lot of graphical and visual, or rather video elements that I could use to do graphic design work or edit videos on any given day's notice. So that drive is usually traveling with me in my backpack and can be used in my laptop, or when I get home for the day, if I go to the office, just plug straight back into the PC here. On local drives, it's incredibly important to have good file systems. This is going to look different from person to person, but having big ideas gradually broken down into smaller, more individual use cases in the actual file system is imperative for being able to find what you need quickly. Even if it's a lot of clicking, being sure that you know where you're going rather than just having all your assets thrown into a root folder or something is it's invaluable comparative to the time that you would spend looking for an asset in that root folder. So while this stuff can take time to build out, and maybe you do it over, maybe you do it in one day where you just sit down and you're like, this is my day to build file systems, or whether it happens gradually as you build your client base and you sort of understand your own personal workflow better, having those systems built out is imperative. For example, on my 3D Assets hard drive that stays connected to my main workstation, I have a folder of libraries, whether that be my Cinema4D Asset browser library, or Grayscale Gorilla Assets, or my Blender asset browser. All of those are housed in one area where I know if I'm looking for something in a library, it's going to be in that folder. Whereas likewise, I'll have a folder of models and then a folder of supplements in there, or furniture or nature assets, all compartmentalized so that I know exactly where it came from, what its purpose is, what the asset itself is, all the way down to the nitty-gritty of individual texture files and stuff like that. Again, this stuff can take some time to build out, but it's so worth it as this becomes your profession, to know where your assets are and what you use and what you don't use, because we're all guilty of downloading an asset, being super psyched about it, and then it goes into a folder where we never find it again because the folder structure is so inconsistent that we're not exactly even sure what's in there. As far as centralized assets go, it depends on the size of your operation. I, as a freelancer, maintain anywhere from 8 to 10 clients at a time, and I've found in my workflow that that is entirely manageable in Google Drive folders. This is cloud storage that I can access from my workstation, from my laptop. I have any sort of client assets or incredibly frequently used graphic resources or anything like that, all sync to Google Drive, where it's able to go between either, and I can even save project files there, and as long as the assets are contained in the same system folders, everything loads no matter where I open it. That's the kind of thing that is invaluable for time saving, when I can stop working here, go to my office, go to a coffee shop, do whatever, change my scenery so that I can stay creatively motivated without having to think at all about what's gonna happen when I unplug this, when my assets delink, all those kinds of things. Having centralized assets allows you to just be creative and not worry about what's gonna happen when all this falls apart when I try to open it on my laptop. As far as my personal centralized storage solutions, I break it down into a couple different things. I have my clients folders, where those are external folders that are shared with my clients. This is gonna contain any branding assets that I have for that client so that I can be sure that I have those anywhere. It's gonna contain some current project type stuff. It's gonna contain final exports for content that we've been working on. And it's generally gonna house some sort of scheduling document as well. Apart from that, I have my most frequently used assets stored in Google Drive as well. Sometimes these are going to be duplicates for something that's on a current drive, but just in case I need it somewhere that I just don't have it, it's in the drive so that as long as I have an internet connection or my cell phone nearby, I can get a hold of them. In Google Drive as well, I also house pretty much everything related to my company branding, so that would be Slate Labs. I host website images there. I keep all my branding assets there. I keep a lot of R&D type stuff there because there's a good chance if I'm on the go that I'll want to continue just exploring an idea that I had. I use Google Drive to keep a lot of my video ideas and documents together. And so as far as company and personal management, centralized storage has been the biggest time saver over the last year that I can possibly think of. In a time where pretty much all systems are changing all the time, with centralized storage, I know where certain things are and that I always have anything that's imperative to me getting work done. There are obviously other options for centralized storage, like Dropbox and iCloud for cloud storage. There are also server systems, either custom or Synology or anything like that, where you can have some centralized assets that you can access from anywhere. For me personally, as mostly a freelancer, I've found that it's perfect to use Google Drive, have everything in one place. That's just easiest for me. It's likely over the next year or so, as I sort of expand this operation that I have, that I will move to something like a Synology server. But for anybody who's getting started or learning or just has clients on their own, having synced centralized assets in Google Drive or anything like that, I can't possibly recommend it enough. I did also in this video want to speak to some specifics of how I manage my CG assets, some client stuff, some just general assets that I use a lot. So for me personally, that is going to involve jumping into Cinema4D and the content browser. I also will at some point in the future do a video on the Blender asset browser, but for now, Cinema4D is still my main 3D program, as long as I'm learning Blender and a couple other things. So I did just want to show you some of how I manage my assets in Cinema4D. So as I said before, a lot of 3D programs and even things like Photoshop or Adobe's library system, a lot of 3D programs have something called an asset browser, and that is where you can kind of build your own file systems and save a lot of the things that you use on a regular basis in one place where they can be dragged and dropped and put back into your workflow consistently. So I just wanted to kind of show you how to use that and how I use that as a tool to stay organized with things that I use frequently. So I'm here in the standard Cinema4D, loading up, like when you first open Cinema4D R25, this is what you get. I have created my own sort of startup template here with my asset browser over here, but I'm gonna start right here just so that everybody's on the same page. What you're gonna wanna do to bring this up is go to Window Asset Browser, and then this right here is gonna pop up wherever wherever it opens by default, which I assume is right here. I'm gonna drag mine to the other side, and you can do that just by clicking and holding on this little 3-line icon up here and drag it, and the white outline is where it's going to appear, where it's going to drop in. And so now our asset browser is open. I'm gonna open the filters or the database properties up here, and this is where you can sort of turn on and off different databases that you create. To create your own custom database, you're gonna wanna go to Edit Preferences. We're gonna wanna come down to Asset Browser. The download location is just an asset cache, so if yours isn't there, just input a default asset cache. It'll look something like this. And then right here is where you will add your own databases. So if you hit Add Folder, and for example, if I wanted to have this be a centralized asset, I would put it in my Google Drive and go to Resources, 3D Resources, and then I could make a new folder called Centralized Frequent Assets. Maybe I spelled that right. And then I just click OK, and now we have a folder here called Centralized Frequent Assets that we're going to be able to access at any time because it's in our Google Drive. From any system, we could just add this folder, and that would be the end of that. And so now if I close this, you can see we have a new database here called Centralized Frequent Assets. And I can right-click down here, create a new category. I'm going to call this Nature Assets. Keep your database the same. Category, it'll be we're creating a category, so there's nothing to put here. You just hit OK. And then, so that category's been created, but there's nothing in it, so nothing appears here yet. So what we want to do is, I will just go File, Merge Objects, and we will go to 3D Assets, and I'm gonna pull in a tree, or rather a fern type asset. The asset browser will also maintain whatever render engine you create the initial settings in. So like I usually use Redshift. It's my production render engine. So if I create this asset in Redshift and I just open my materials really quickly, I'm going to delete this, maybe if it will let me. And then if I create Redshift material, I can open this, edit the shader graph, and so whatever materials you have, I'll just put in a bump, a diffuse, and opacity for now, since I'm just kind of making an example. Let me just make this really quick. We'll go diffuse color. I'll add in a bump map. Toss this into the input, overall bump input, and then opacity color. So now we have this asset in Redshift that is a fern. And so if I'm going to connect objects plus delete to make this one object, and then all you have to do is drag this over here, and you can put it in your centralized frequent assets and put it in your nature assets. That's our category that we made. And boom, there it is. It brings in our texture material, or our material textures. It has obviously our geometry. And to show you what that did in our Google Drive folder we made, I'll show you resources, 3D resources, centralized frequent assets. And so now we have these files that Cinema4D has automatically generated so that we can reference back to this whenever we want. So if I come in here, close that out completely, we just go new project, assuming we start in the standard, we would just go window, asset browser, and then we can drag this in, and it's already textured and ready to go, and we can do whatever we want. So that is kind of just what I do in the asset browser in Cinema4D. Again, Blender has one of these, you know, obviously 3ds Max, Maya, Houdini. All of these programs are built to work with files. Blender's is actually brand new, so it's not my favorite. It's not quite as intuitive as the Cinema4D one, but they can all do it, and you can create centralized assets that are just so easy to reference back to. So I hope that this video was able to help you in one way or another when it comes to your thought process on storing assets that you use for your creative work. At the end of the day, all that matters is that we're able to be creative and push the boundaries of what's possible with these incredible technologies that we have the pleasure of using in the age that we're living in. Keeping your assets central is just the best way to put everything together in one place where we can be efficient and creative, and just incredible things are able to be made. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. A lot of new content is coming out. This upcoming week, I should have a video out on building a workstation rig around VFX work specifically. So that should be a good one. And there's a couple other sort of series type ideas in the works. So leave a like on the video if you appreciated it, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all very soon.